Welcome everybody to the info session for our program in Melbourne, Australia. This is a fantastic program, and I'm really excited to have an opportunity to chat with you all about it. I'm Chris Van Booven. I'm one of the assistant directors of Study Abroad, and I'm actually joined here tonight by one of our returnees who spent the academic year, or at least as much as she was able to get in this past year. So Abby, if you want to introduce yourself, give your full name and majors and all that good stuff.
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Abby. I am a current senior at Holy Cross. I'm originally from Anthem, Arizona. I am an English major with a double minor in environmental studies and philosophy, pre-law. And yeah, I think that's it.
Fantastic.
For the moment. Like Chris said, I was in Melbourne for a year, and I went to St. Mary's. So I'll throw that in there, and then yeah, that's basically it.
That's a great preview. So St. Mary's is one of the residential colleges where you have an option to potentially to live. So we will go into the details of that before too long. So with that, I am going to share my screen, and we will go ahead and get started. So Melbourne, let's start a little bit bigger with the country. So you're heading to the other side of the world, to Australia, a place that had been initially inhabited by Aboriginal people for a period between 50 to 60,000 years, only discovered by Europeans in 1770, Captain Cook. And so over the course of its time span, relatively, small amount of time in terms of its European colonization. So just would like to, have that borne in mind. The country is divided into 6 states that are listed here. The state that you all are going to be focusing on is the state of Victoria, and the city of Melbourne in particular. The population of Australia is around 25 million. And I'd like to provide it just to give you some context relative to the US, with a population of 328 million. So certainly less densely populated, considering the geographical sort of region is comparable. The capital is Canberra, and English, Australian English, as we'll learn, there are some variations. Is the majority language, but there are a number of Indigenous Australian languages that are spoken as well. And in addition, there are speakers of Mandarin, Greek, and Arabic as the largest additional languages. In terms of its government, it's a federal parliamentary constitutional monarchy. A mouthful, but the long and the short of it is that they still swear fealty to the Crown, Elizabeth II. And again, just a little bit of context about the broader country that you're going to be going. Going to be focusing our attention tonight on the city of Melbourne, which it truly is a city in terms of our destination. I think one of the things that sets Melbourne apart among the suite of like Holy Cross programs that we offer is that it is in a major and sort of bustling, vibrant city relative to some of our European programs, which tend, generally speaking, to be in a little bit smaller cities and so forth. So if you're looking for an awesome sort of like urban experience to really sort of complement what you have in Worcester, Melbourne is a fabulous way to go. It's 4.5 million people. It's the largest city in Victoria and the second largest in the country. Absolutely a destination. Sydney gets a lot of attention, but Melbourne is phenomenal. It's one of the things that folks from Melbourne love to tout is their consistent ranking as the most livable city in the world. It's just a really pleasant place to be. In terms of culture and commerce, art, music, sports. You got to go to an Australian rules football game. There's so much to do. It's a really just exciting place to be. They're proud of having a tramway system that is the largest outside of Europe. It's really great. I've had a chance to ride it myself. It's awesome. You can take it directly from, where you are at the university and hop on and then get yourself down to the water. It is near the coast. Be there in, what would you say, Abby? How long was it? 20 minutes, 25 minutes to get down to like
Yeah, like St. Kilda.
St. Kilda, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it's sort of, yeah, probably like I honestly when well, I usually just drove with friends, but it's really not that far. It's super easy. It's the tram I think is probably like 30 minutes. But it's such like the Australian trams are awesome. So it's always like an experience being on there and stuff. So I would recommend it. And at St. Kilda you can see all the penguins.
That's awesome. That's right. That's right. I forgot about that. Yep. And one of the things that's cool about the tram too is that in the downtown area and it, when you're at the University of Melbourne, if you just go like one stop past the University of Melbourne towards the downtown area, my memory of it is that it's free to sort of hop on and hop. Is it 2 stops past University?
Yeah. So it's 2 stops down and then you're in the free tram zone. So
So
you
you
can
kind of hop on, hop off.
Yeah, it is. It's really nice. You have a straight shot like right from where St. Mary's is, but it's also like right next to University of Melbourne. So you'll have a straight shot like right into the city, less than 10 minutes. It's also a really nice walk, and it's not that far either. It's like 30 minutes. It's super nice.
Yeah, and it's again just visually very appealing place. A nice combination of kind of older buildings, but a lot of modern buildings. Like some of the downtown architecture is really stunning. The Melbourne skyline is awesome. When you get down to the riverway, it's just gorgeous. You can walk along. It's just like really pleasant to walk around there. And one of the things I think is also really cool about Melbourne is that it's a really diverse place. About a third of the population was born outside of Australia, and there's a large presence of folks from Southeast Asia in particular. And that really gives the city just a really interesting dynamic. Again, culturally very diverse. It's reflected in the food, certainly. I mean, you can get food from everywhere, but a particularly good Southeast Asian food. I'd like to give, since we're on the subject of the city, Abby, just if you could share your impressions of the city itself.
Yeah, so I mean, you touched on architecture. The architecture is amazing. There's like a really good combination of new modern buildings, skyscrapers, but also old buildings. One of the schools that you'll see down there is RMIT, and if you're going to be living at the colleges, you might live with some students from RMIT, and they have really funky, weird architecture on their buildings. So you'll see that as soon as you go in, because their campus really is like in the main part of Melbourne. The architecture of University of Melbourne is also gorgeous. It's very university, like lots of trees, lots of nature, old brick buildings, very gorgeous, but paired with very modern buildings. So like the design building is very sleek. In terms of the city, like everyone is so incredibly nice. You won't believe it, and I can't describe it to you. But Australians are just very welcoming. They're always there to help. So that's something, like I walked into a store one time when I first got there, because they have a lot of really great vintage and like off shops. And they're always just like, oh, like you're new, let me tell you where to go, or like here are some places to go see. Chinatown is absolutely gorgeous. They take a lot of pride in it. And so they're always doing new things, adding new lanterns. It's really fun to go down there and walk. And like Chris said, the food is absolutely amazing. Would 100% recommend going down there. And also one thing to look out for is Melbourne has a lot of street art, and it's really incredible. The buildings are absolutely gorgeous. And like every time you go down just like a nook or cranny alley, like there's going to be something incredible, like whether it be a shop or a cafe. They have really great cafes, guys. You'll find art, like it's just incredible. And there's also like a good amount of nature as well, like incorporated into it. So it's a really great city. I would 100% recommend, and it's very walkable. And like Chris said, it's also got the tram, and it's also got trains underground as well. So it's very easy to maneuver.
you mentioned the street art. There's actually, I don't know if they had it, they were offering it during your time that you were there, but they actually, my memory is that they have an entire course at the university.
Yeah,
that's
Grace actually
dedicated
took
to
it.
street art. Yep.
Yeah, Grace took it. She really loved it. They would go out not every class, but every couple classes and walk around the city and see like the artwork. And it truly is incredible. Like it is absolutely incredible. You see a lot of it when you go past RMIT again, but also when you go like to the Melbourne like University of Melbourne law like school, because I had a class in there. So like there's a ton on the left, and it's gorgeous.
Awesome. So the main bullet point here is that it's a fabulous city, and it's, you know, again, you're going to have a wonderful time if you make it your home for a semester for an academic year. So that's just the city with the context where you're going to be. Then we now talk about the university, and it's the #1 university in Australia, and it's ranked number 31 in the globe. One of their favorite statistics that they like to promote as well is that it's the #7 in global employability as well. So it's just a powerhouse academically. They've got incredible research facilities there, and it's huge, right? So one of the things that I love about it for Holy Cross students is that, you know, if you're looking to really give yourself the broadest possible range of experiences as a student to be able to demonstrate to, you know, to future employers or to, you know, grad school, you know, admissions committees and so forth, that you know, can not only have this really strong foundation in liberal arts with the small classes and so forth, you can also go to a place like the University of Melbourne where you experience, you know, in terms of the design, the organization of instruction, it's a very different kind of experience. But in this sort of framework, the University of Melbourne it does it, you know, better than, you know, most places in the world. And so when I say huge, it's 50,000 students. That includes both the graduate and undergraduate population. It is just a colossal place. Established in 1853. It is a very international university. So they have a huge international student population, as you can see here, from over 130 countries represented. So at most basic, you know, you're going to be encountering a system where, unlike, you know, the typical sort of seminar style classes that you have at Holy Cross, a majority of classes at Melbourne are going to be a format that basically pairs a large lecture that the you know, professor will give. Typically, you know, how long would you say the typical lectures were for you, Abby?
They sort of depend, but I would say you either have one that's like an hour, or
Yep.
you have one that is, I want to say it's like an hour 45, 2
Yep.
hours.
Yep.
But they're very different from Holy Cross, where like you have them, if you have an hour one, you'll have it like maybe twice a week. And then if you have a 2-hour one, it's only once a week. So you're not meeting multiple times a week to lecture.
Exactly. And that framework is, again, for when you're coming. So a lot of times when folks go to a program like Melbourne, and this is true, I think, also for our English language programs in Europe, one of the biggest sources of sort of culture shock is academics, in terms of, you know, coming to, you know, encountering a system that's very, very different in terms of higher education, where, again, you pair this large lecture with then a tutorial, or like essentially like a discussion section that ends up being a smaller group where you have opportunities to sort of engage in greater depth with the material. And you're usually doing that with a grad student who is working, you know, with the professor. So, you know, coming from a place like Holy Cross, where, you know, you're used to having like sort of lots of one-on-one connections with the professor themselves, it's less common to have that sort of relationship with the main professor of record for the course in terms of the lecturer. It's more common to develop relationships with the folks that are leading the tutorials, the grad students. And again, what I love about this is that the reality is that what we do at Holy Cross, in terms of the way that learning and instruction is designed on a global scale, it's pretty unique, right? And so Whereas at what they're doing at the University of Melbourne, most places in the world, higher education is organized that way. Like I myself as a case in point, I didn't go to a liberal arts college. I was at the University of Southern California, and when I was seeing, beginning to advise students on the University of Melbourne, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we did. So I'd make a point of emphasizing that, to know that as you go beyond Holy Cross, and into the world or into grad school, having the ability to at least be familiar with this context of education, firsthand, I think is going to be really valuable for you in terms of being able to be flexible, and again, be able to demonstrate that you can excel no matter what the context. Abby, I want to give you a chance to talk in general about your experience in the classroom, and sort of like the differences you encountered, how do you manage them, sort of what you did to work beyond those differences and really try to get the most out of the experience academically.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I'm an English major with a double minor in philosophy and environmental studies. So that sort of informed the classes I was going to be taking, only because I was probably not as smart as you all are, and I finished all of my common requirements before I went abroad. So I had to make sure that my classes while I was abroad fit into my major, and we're going to be accepted for my minors as well. So any of you who maybe are like me know that that's possible. For sure, you can find classes there that are going to be accepted by your departments. You just do a little bit more work. But I took a good mix of classes. So I had some English, I had philosophy, and I also took some science classes. So I had a very good range while I was there. Like Chris said, you really are not really working with your professors like you do at Holy Cross. And that's definitely a learning curve, but I do think that it's a good skill to learn how to adapt to, if that makes sense. So it takes a couple weeks, but I think that making sure you're in touch with your tutors is important. I know for sciences, it's always going to be a grad student, like Chris mentioned. In English, I had every class that I took in English, it was always my professor. So in that case, it was a little bit nicer because I got to talk to them a little bit more, but it sort of just depends. Something fun is they will always have you call them by their first names, the professors. So it's never professor, I don't know, whatever. It's always going to be Matt or something like that. So that's something different. I think that one of the great things is that the lectures are recorded. And I don't say that to say don't go to class, because I definitely think you should go to class. But if you're someone like me, when I was in the science courses, it was very quick in going through the information. And sometimes I needed to go back through it, since I didn't have as much access as I usually have to professors. So it was nice to go and be able to stop the recordings and make sure I had all my notes down and got all the information and start them again, just to reaffirm the information that we were learning that week. I will say something else that's different is it's not so much emphasis on participation, and there's not a lot of little assignments. You'll find that it's going to be very big chunks of your grades. I had a philosophy class, it was 3 papers, and then your final paper, that was it. Or it was 2 exams and a paper or a project, and that was it. So it takes a lot more focus, but it's definitely doable, and the skills that you've learned at Holy Cross are definitely going to help you. It's not going to be something so wildly different that you can't apply what you usually do to this new setting, I would say.
That summarizes it beautifully. Thank you so much, Abby. I really appreciate that. We'll get to this in a minute, but one of the other advantages of studying at a place like Melbourne is that because they have such a large population, and because they have such a rich array of departments to choose from, that you have access to an enormous catalog of courses to choose from, right? So I'll demo in a little bit, just to kind of so you know how to be doing some kind of independent research on your own. I'll do a demonstration of the Melbourne Handbook, which is the course catalog searching tool, and so you'll see that at a glance, you've just got tons and tons options at your fingertips. So that's again, one of the main reasons to study abroad is to take advantage of academic opportunities that aren't offered at Holy Cross. And I think that Melbourne is a great case in point for that, just given the sheer volume of courses that you have available across a whole wide range of disciplines. Awesome. So when can you study in Melbourne, right? So what I want to show you here is these, what I have are the semester possibilities that you have here. And you'll note here that I'm not using sort of fall and spring, because what happens is the Melbourne being in the Southern Hemisphere, the academic calendar is flipped. So they actually start their calendar year, or sorry, they start their academic year, I should say, at the beginning of the year. So in other words, February is, as you can see here, where I have, February 18th, 2022. Their semester one it runs from February through the middle to end of June. And then their second semester runs from the middle of July through November 19th. So when you go for our fall semester, you're actually going for their semester two, sort of midway through their semester, right? And so what I want to point out, though, is that as Abby is here, able to sort of demonstrate, we have the ability, and we strongly recommend that you consider going abroad for 2 semesters, right? And there are 2 ways to do it, right? So one way to do it is to go for Holy Cross's academic year. And that's where you go in the fall, right? And basically you spend your full junior year there, right? So you spend, our fall semester and our spring semester there, their semester 2. And then you sort of have a gap, as we'll see, and then you go into semester 1. So the important thing to note there is that you'll see that between November 19th, right, at 2021, and the next semester, there's a pretty sizable gap, and that's because that's their summer, right? And so the way that works is, you have a couple of different options there. Folks do different things. You can return home. If you do, it is at your expense. The program, as we'll talk about later, covers a travel credit that's good for 1 round trip ticket. Alternatively, what a lot of folks do in this situation is they end up finding an apartment. You do that on your own. The University of Melbourne does have a housing office that can offer some potential support along those lines if it's something that you're looking into. But the bottom line is you find an apartment on your own, and then folks will get a job and work. One of the really awesome things about Melbourne and Australia in general is that a student visa, you can work on it, right? So, and the minimum wage that they offer in Australia is actually super livable. It's like 20 Australian dollars, which roughly equates to like 14 US. And so a lot of times folks will just get a job, get an apartment, and then just really live as a resident in Melbourne through the summer. Take advantage of the opportunity to do some travel, like either in country or like, nearby in sort of Southeast Asia. And then the idea is that you then come back for the start of semester 1. Abby, what did you end up doing? How did you manage that?
So I went for the academic year, as you know. My parents wanted me to come home for Christmas, so I did go home. So what I ended up doing is, you finish, as Chris says, in November. So I actually traveled around Australia and the South Pacific. And so I did Sydney, and then I did Bali, and I was in Bali for quite a bit of time. And then I came back, and I actually went to one of the more rural parts of Victoria with a friend of mine who lived there, and I stayed with her family for a couple weeks. And then I eventually came home. Probably shouldn't have. I regret that now in a way. So I came home for a little bit, but I did actually leave early, and I spent some of the summer living with one of my friends in Melbourne in her apartment for a couple weeks before I eventually moved back into college. So I would I think that it's definitely easier to understand the housing process for like summer living once you get to the university and understand like the way of life there. Because I could have easily like found an apartment. It would have been no problem. I just like hadn't thought about it, and my parents really wanted me to come home for Christmas, so I did. But I definitely think it's super easy to do, and like once you meet people there, it'll be very, very easy. And yeah, it's definitely super livable, like you said. And there's a ton of places that you could work for sure. There's a ton of coffee shops and off shops and cafes and stuff, so you definitely could find it.
One of the other nice things about going for the academic year too is that it gives you a longer period of time to try to cultivate relationships, to do things like internships, right? And
Yeah.
And get involved with like research. So we've had students that were able to establish connections with faculty to where they stayed on through that summer to do research with faculty. So you can what you do with that time depends on you and how, the ways that you can take advantage of that. So so that's something to also consider. Abby, did you have something to add on as far as that was? No. So the academic year, like our academic year, is one way to make it work. But let's say like the idea of having that big gap, the expense of potentially having to come home is not appealing to you. One thing that we've had students do in the past is we call it the calendar year, which is basically Melbourne's academic year, where you go semester one, so which ends up being the spring semester of your junior year, and then you stay on through the fall semester of your senior year. A lot of folks hear that and they're like, dude, you're out of your mind. There's no way I'm gonna, spend my senior year, not at Holy Cross. But for a lot of folks, depending on, on their majors and the way that things kind of sequence, it ends up working out to where that's the optimal way to do it. And again, you can see that if you do it that way, the gap, there's still a little bit of a gap. It's from the 25th through the 15th. It's 25th of June, excuse me, through the 15th of July. Much shorter gap in terms of being able to sort of have to live independently, and depending on the housing arrangement, it may be possible to stay on through. We can talk about that later on though, or like sort of one-on-one. So those are the various eligible terms. We again strongly urge you to stay on for the academic year. Abby, would you mind just chiming in a little bit about just what because one of the things that we obviously talk about ad nauseum in the office is the benefits of studying abroad for for the full year, and obviously under this in the current landscape of where we find ourselves with like not being at Holy Cross, I can see how that's maybe especially unappealing initially, but really you owe it to yourself to consider it. And Abby, I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah. So I don't know if you remember, but I initially came in like wanting to study for the year. And so there's like a lot of great benefits. I think that one of the main ones is that it takes you, like, as you would in any place or any new situation, you're going to have time to adjust. And that's different for every person, and how just like your personality and wherever you are. So I think that doing a year is great because like it usually happens that the last like couple months you're really comfortable, but then you have to leave, and it's so sad to leave. And like one of the girls that I went with from Holy Cross, Grace, we're very good friends, and she was only planning on doing a semester, and she really, like, by the end of it, she was really trying to see if she could work out how to do a year. And really the only thing that stopped her from doing so was the fact that she wanted to row, and she's an athlete. So like, that's the only reason why she didn't. But if she like take that out of the equation, and she would have been there for a year. Like, you really enjoy your time there. And it's really nice once you get comfortable to be able to do so. And so I think sometimes with the semester, you like just start getting comfortable by the time you have to leave. And it's so sad because you really do create like these great friends and like these memories and experiences, and you want to continue those. So having the year allows you to do that. So I would really say, like, really, it may be scary, but I really would say try and do the year. And as Chris said, like, you can potentially cultivate like relationships within the university where you're doing jobs and stuff like that. But even just like with the people that you meet traveling around Australia, just learning more about their culture, because it is so interesting, and the diversity there is incredible. So I would 100% recommend doing a year. You will have so much fun. You'll have fun anyway, but more memories.
Absolutely. And you know, it's just that the reality is that relationships take time to develop. So I mean, if you think back on, you know, your first semester at Holy Cross, you know, as a good example, where it's, you know, you in that first semester you're figuring things out, you're kind of both in terms of academically and you know, in the classroom, but then also socially in terms of finding out where, you know, where you fit, you know, who your friends are. And then it's in that second semester that, like, it's like, all right, I have an emerging sense of like kind of who I am in this place. And that's when you get to really start to enjoy the work that you've put into it. So, so that's all that I'll say on that. I urge you to reach out to me, and, you know, and personally we can talk through and kind of find ways of making it work. So housing, you have options, right? So the first option I want to talk about is the residential college. So this is a uniquely Australian sort of institution. At the University of Melbourne, there are 10 of these residential colleges, which are these sort of self-contained academic living communities, both undergraduates and grad students. Did St. Mary's have grad students?
So usually our grad students are the tutors.
Are the tutors? Okay, got
or
it.
Like the duty tutors, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. 'Cause I'd understood them to be largely undergraduate populations of students. So yeah, and they each, so each of these 10 colleges has their own sort of identity. They're different sizes. They range from like, you know, like 150 to like, you know, 350 in that range, like 300, somewhere around that, the larger ones. They are awesome for folks who are looking for, you know, a lot of structure in terms of like their social lives. Like if you're like the kind of person that like would benefit from like having opportunities to kind of like a plug and play social community where like you know you have like activities at you know, your residential college, you know, hosts all the time. You have, you know, sort of mandatory meetings that you go to where like the idea is that like you're, you know, building community, you know, again, that social space to like immediately tap into. The residential colleges are an awesome option. As you know, it mentions here on the slide, they also have like resources in terms of like academic support. They all have their own, you know, sort of libraries and various, you know, facilities to be able to take advantage of in terms of like physical spaces. You get a fully furnished sort of single room. And a key difference here from the other option that we'll talk about is that all of your meals are provided, much like at Holy Cross. So it's full board. So you don't have to do any, you know, any cooking. So another thing to point out about the residential college as well is that they are the option that where, again, comparing the two that are available to you, the residential colleges, and as we'll talk about a bit, the student apartments, they're the housing option where you are more apt to be housing with Australian students. The student apartments, as we'll talk about in a bit, tend to have a more sort of international student population, whereas at the residential colleges, a lot of folks, and depending on the college, it may be like a majority of Australian students. So that's a really nice opportunity to be able to kind of integrate into the local sort of student population. The only thing that, you know, they'll say is about the residential college as well is that, you know, for folks who really value sort of independence and like you want to cook your own meals, you don't want to like be told like this is the like when you eat and this is what you eat, or like you don't want to have to go to mandatory, you know, meetings or mandatory dinners and that sort of thing. You like the idea of like sort of, again, organizing your time in exactly the way that you see fit. Then the residential colleges may not be you know, a good fit for you, because the expectation when you go to a residential college is that you participate fully as a member of that community. So Abby went to St. Mary's, which is one of the colleges that Holy Cross students have been going to for a long time. You have access to all 10, and you really should try to choose one that seems to be a good fit for you in terms of their mission. They have each have a website and social media where you can kind of acquaint yourself with their ethos. But for whatever it's worth, we've had a lot of students go to St. Mary's, and Abby, yeah, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably just going to be like a massive plug for Mary's, but
That's okay.
I like 100% recommend St. Mary's. It's the picture on the left. That's the front of the gate. Newman is the picture on the right. They're right by each other. So St. Mary's is my favorite college. It is the smallest one, or one of the smallest ones. Hilda's might be a little bit smaller, but it's one of the smallest colleges, and I think there's really something to be said for that. You will have like the tightest knit community, and there's nothing that that you've ever experienced that's similar to this. It's nothing like Holy Cross. It's quite amazing. So you guys will eat together, you'll hang out together, you're with them 24/7. And that sounds so weird, but it's truly incredible. And like, you never get sick of people, and you always have new people to talk to, and everyone's so friendly and so welcoming. So I really highly recommend it. The rooms are great. Dinner, Mary's is known for being one of the better, having one of the better kitchens on campus. We have the best, or I had St. Mary's has one of the best pastries. Zola, she's awesome. She makes the best stuff. It's super accessible. If you're gluten-free or vegan, they always have a couple dishes for you, stuff like that. Darcy, the principal, is so nice. He's such a sweet man. Everyone at the front desk is awesome. You do have access to the academic center, more commonly known as the ACCI. You do share it with Newman, but that's fine. There's unofficial floors for everyone, but it's like dine-ins. You go and you sit there. Really sweet staff to help you, books surrounding you. It's quite gorgeous. They've got recording rooms. If you're into music, you can go up there. They've got pianos everywhere. St. Mary's has a ton of pianos. I think there's 3. So more often than not, you'll hear people playing them. St. Mary's plays a ton of all the sports. So the colleges will compete in intercollegiate sports. I will say St. Mary's is not good at sports, and it's something we somewhat pride ourselves on, is our lack of athletic ability, unless you're playing men's footy or rowing. So rowing's a really big sport at St. Mary's, and they're usually very good in men's footy. You'll learn about Australian football if you go. There's nothing quite like it. You'll definitely have to catch a game. As Chris said, we like Melbourne because it's the same colors as St. Mary's. And you'll learn the songs for both, and they rhyme, or they're the same song, just different words. So it's quite nice. And then there's a dog, Henry, would recommend. He's a golden retriever. He hangs out. But like Chris said, just in general for the resident colleges, you are going to have be living with Australian students. And so it is a really great way to integrate and get to know the culture, and also get to know the city more. When I first went, the first couple days, I was already going downtown. I was catching a footy match. So you do integrate, I think, a lot easier because you have access to so many different people who are, and like I said, all of them are willing to bring you in and show you where to go and what's a good place, and here's some coffee and stuff like that. Show you around. So that's pretty incredible. You do get your own rooms. The floors will have floor dinners. They're quite fun. You do have high table and formal dinners, which are a little bit unique. So high table usually happens twice a week. And you have academic gowns that you wear. It's not formal, but you throw your Ackie on over it. And that's just where you're served dinner. And there's Darcy will come up and give a little talk and stuff like that. It's not too bad. It's actually quite nice. And then formal dinners are lots of fun. You never want to miss those. That's where you get dressed up, wear your Ackie. And usually there's something to do after. There's a lot of events that the colleges throw. Every college has a ball. That's very fun. They'll do cruises, Mary's has a cruise. That was awesome. They're always having turns, which are little parties in the Jace, which is where you'll hang out. They've got a pool table and stuff like that. You've got your little
terms to acquire.
Yeah, sorry. You'll get it.
I love it. I love it. It's
sorry. Yeah, but anyway, lots of fun. I would 100% recommend them, and also would say Mary's is the best one. So, but that's
no
just
whatsoever. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not biased, but yeah. I would, and it's also located. All of them are located on the Crescent, so they have really good access to tram lines. So there's one that goes straight into the city, and then on the back side, you'll have one that'll be able to take you to Queen Vic Market, which is a really big market where you can go they have winter and summer markets, get cool clothing, and also like fruits and vegetables on the weekends. So yeah.
One of the things that's nice too about the residential colleges is that, you know, the athletics tends to be a kind of a fun component of that. I would say in general, with some exceptions, of course, athletics in Australia are not quite the same level of sort of intensity and like as they are in the US when you think of kind of like Division I like athletics, and like so even if you don't really consider yourself an athlete, it's really fun to get involved in the residential college, like intramural and intramural sports, because it's a really fun way to like meet folks and have the spirit, as I understand it, is like it's about having fun and like
Yeah.
kind of a social thing to do. And you do, like, there are competitions like between between the colleges, like there are sporting events that like will go where the colleges will compete amongst each other. So again, just it's a really fun sort of thing to get yourself involved in. But as you can see, it's very much like, a lot of that structure is in place for you. So if that is not something that appeals to you, the student apartments are a great option for folks who value like having independence. So they have a really great international student community there. They have some social program, but definitely not on the order that they have at the residential colleges. But there's no expectations that you go into, mandatory events and so forth. So you have much more sort of freedom to kind of organize your time as you see fit. You live in single rooms, but you're in a 4-bedroom apartment. So at least in the context of like your apartment, you will have, chances to meet folks. You're placed sort of with folks at random. I mean, you talk about your interests, and there is kind of a placement process, but it's unlikely, for example, that you'll be placed with a Holy Cross student. The rooms are all furnished. They have everything that you need as part of like the main study abroad package that they have. The key thing again is that there's no meal plan for these, right? But you have kitchen facilities. So the idea is that you're buying groceries and you're cooking food. I'll talk about what the implications that has then for the billing when we get to the section on finances. But just to know that in terms of like your food, it's not going to be provided for you. You'll be ultimately purchasing groceries and shopping for yourself. Two other things that I point out as well about the student apartments that can be a bit of an advantage is in terms of where the student apartments are located, the student village apartments. They are closer to the downtown area. So they are like, if you step out of the student village apartment door and you like take a right, you go to, you're like right at the university. You take out and you go to the left, you're at like the sort of the upper portion of the downtown area. So it's a little bit closer to the downtown area. So you're kind of like right between. So in terms of being able to like have slightly easier access to the downtown area, that's one thing that I like to point out. Closer to that market that Abby was talking about as well. And the other thing about the student villages is that they tend to open up earlier than the residential colleges in general. So, often they'll open up within like, a month before the start of classes, and you can go as early as you'd like, and immediately start getting a Melbourne experience. And so that's another, advantage just to point out there. Usually with the residential colleges, it's like, the day before your first mandatory meeting is the earliest you can move in. So just, again, a small detail there. If you find yourself, I'm not sure sort of which option, is for you, definitely, reach out to me, set up an appointment, and I can, connect you. I can talk you through some of the differences and also connect you with students who have stayed in each location. Often students will ask me sort of which is better, kind of, broadly. And there isn't really a straightforward answer to that, because it really depends on what you're looking for in an experience. The only other note is that it may be possible to arrange a different housing. If you're going for the academic year, you could start, let's say, in a student apartment and then transfer to a residential college as a possibility as well. I already mentioned this bit about housing over the summer. So again, if you're going for the academic year, the expectation is that you will have to find and pay for your summer housing on your own. But again, you will be able to stay on and work. There is no during the non sort of instructional periods like the summer where there's no classes. The number of hours you can work is unlimited. So you can really, stand to do, quite well over the summer there. Did you have okay. Visas. So what I'll say first off the bat is you need a passport. So if you don't have one right now, you really should apply for one right now, because there's been delays right now owing to COVID-19. So definitely check your passport, see if it's valid through at least January 2023. Definitely want to make sure that you do that. You're going to be responsible for completing your own visa applications. I'll be giving you detailed instructions about how to do that. And then also responsible for paying the visa fees. The visa for Australia is unfortunately I think it's the second most expensive one. So if you're considering Australia, sorry, you have expensive taste when it comes to the visas. It's currently hovering around the $415 mark. And that is one of the few sort of out-of-pocket expenses that Holy Cross students are expected to pay. And let's see, if you're not a U.S. citizen, you just want to make sure that you look into the visa requirements for your country. Already mentioned, again, on a student visa, you can work. Basically, I mean, there's this note about the credits, but really in my experience, and Abby, you can correct me if I'm wrong, my experience has been that students usually, the way that the credit system works out is that a majority of credits in the local system are 12 credits. So a majority of classes are 12 credits. And so you take 4 and that gets you to the load that you're looking for. It's 12.5 credits and that gets you to the 50 credit load. So I don't know. And I've been with the college for almost 3 years, and I have not encountered a student who did not have a standard 4-course load. So that shouldn't be an issue there. So it's, again, 1-to-1 ratio, much simpler relative to some of our like European programs, for example, that have different course weightings, et cetera. And so as far as your course options, this is, again, one of the most wonderful things about Melbourne is just the sheer range of options that you have. I list these subject areas just as kind of, some examples, but really you can cast a wide net. The one thing that I'll note here is that sometimes students will get into the catalog, and they'll start to like get really excited when they see like pre-professional courses in like business, or like, Abby, I remember this being a situation for you as well, like law. Like if you're interested in pre-law, you're like, oh, cool, I can take a law course, again, or like a medicine course or something along those lines if I'm going to, a health direction. Unfortunately, I have to urge you to kind of pump the brakes on that, because that's one thing that is not going to be approved for credit by the Holy Cross Registrar. They don't approve any pre-professional programs. And so if you have questions about that and like specifics, you're like, I see this particular course, it seems really interesting, do you think this would count for credit? Just talk to me and I can help you liaise with the registrar to kind of figure it out. The main idea is that, again, if it's a kind of course that could be offered at Holy Cross, it's a liberal arts course, it'll be offered. And so, for example, like generally speaking, if you can have a course that's on sort of health, or like, let's say like on law, that's like offered by a political science department, but like generally speaking, you can't take like courses directly from like, from like, let's say the law school or like the med school, et cetera. Abby, it sounds like were you able to engineer a workaround there?
Yeah, so I actually was. So I was just gonna say, like, I would obviously like try and find like the liberal arts courses that are similar, but I will say, like, if you do have one and you think and you're really, really interested in it, I don't think it hurts to ask.
Always, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because like I did take an environmental law class and it was in the law school. Like nice. It was law 2009 or something like that.
And that's awesome that you were able to do that. That's great.
Yeah. So I would say, like, if you do find a class, just ask and see if like it's possible. I would say, like, one of the biggest things that was helpful to me was like I found the classes that I wanted, and I was in communication with the department heads for study abroad within like the English department, philosophy and environmental studies, making sure that like these would cover like my requirements, but then also talking with the registrar's office. So I think like that's really, really important, but always just ask. I would
Absolutely.
say.
No, I think that's excellent advice. And so that's a good thing to reiterate too when it comes to having communication with the various departments. So when it comes to courses that you're requesting to be applied towards your major, your minor, your concentration, those approvals will ultimately come from your advisors in those departments. When it comes to common area requirements, those are going to be approved by the registrar. This is a good. Oh, and the one other thing that I'll note here is that you have to take one Australian content course, and they're awesome. It sounds like they are some of the coolest courses that they have on there, and they offer them in a wide range of disciplines. So I don't think that you'll find it to be overly limiting to have to take one of those. And I think they end up being like some of the the most fascinating courses that the students end up taking. Yeah. What was yours? What did you end up doing for that?
So I actually took the Australian environmental philosophy. I actually took a couple. It was an
Nice.
accident. So I took Australian environmental philosophy, which that one's actually not going to be offered anymore. It's being revamped by the department because it's actually in the Indigenous Studies department.
Oh, okay.
So like Nico is redoing it. And then I did Australian flora and fauna. So that's really interesting. And then I also did Australian literature. So I took a lot.
Yeah, good for you.
And then my law class ended up being like Australian law, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, and still another Australian bio class. I will say it's very interesting if you guys can take a class on like the Indigenous people of Australia. It is absolutely incredible. Nothing like you've ever seen before. They are very, very cool, and they're very much integrated into like the culture, if that makes sense, more so than I think Native Americans and Indigenous people of America are here. Like usually you'll start out with your classes acknowledging that you're on their land. So in Melbourne and in Victoria and on the University of Melbourne's campus, you're on the Wurundjeri people's land. So you'll hear that they'll acknowledge like their elders, past, present, and future. And so like if you go to a college, I know our president Darcy would always say that before we had dinner. So it's that you are very much aware of their presence and like the land that you're on and whose that is. So I will say it's like very interesting. So I really recommend taking a class about that.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Yeah, students have found that to be a really enriching part of the experience, and you're right. It's something that is in I think a really refreshing way. It's foregrounded throughout the institution and in the city in general. And so yeah, I'm really glad that you pointed that out. I want to before I forget, take advantage of this opportunity to just quickly demo a couple of things. So so the first is the Melbourne Handbook. So a quick tutorial in, this is your first Australian English lesson. So here this is the Melbourne Handbook. I will provide, if you just search Melbourne Handbook on Google, this will come right up. This is their searchable catalog. So what I generally advise is that you do like the previous academic year, because usually for the current handbook, they're like continuing to populate it. So if you want to have see what the most complete course catalog is, to be able to see kind of like what options are in general, I would recommend using the previous year's catalog. And so you enable that. So you have here courses and subjects. So courses sounds an awful lot like classes, but in Australian English, course is more like program. What you're ultimately interested in is the subjects. So you click on subjects right here, and then that's where I would cast a wide net at first, just to kind of dazzle yourself with the array of options that you have. So just type in something like philosophy, something like that, and you get 554 results. And so this can be just kind of a fun way to enjoy the catalog, get to know kind of a little bit about how it works. You can also on this side, I would, as you kind of are trying to narrow things down, you can choose sort of field of study. So if you wanted to make sure it was offered by a particular department, you can go in and do that here. You can also, choose again the sort of faculty department kind of more broadly. The subject levels as well. If you want to narrow, make sure you're not pulling up a bunch of graduate courses, you can do all undergraduate course, and occasionally folks have been able to do honors courses. So you can do that as well. And then, and again, that gives you a sense of kind of the various classes that you can look on. And they have a really, so in each of these, if you if you read on these, you have like the full detailed description of it. Any sort of prerequisites that there might be would appear here, and so on and so forth. So that's again, it's a really user-friendly catalog, and I urge you to kind of like have fun playing with it, because that's again one of the things that's wonderful about Melbourne. It's just the huge range of courses you have. Because Abby had brought it up, I thought it'd be useful to just quickly show you on the Holy Cross website. So as you're working your way through, and this getting started steps to study abroad, so this is sa.holycross.edu. This tab right here, if you click this, this will bring you to all the steps to study abroad. And one of those steps is talking to a study abroad advisor in your academic department. So one of the great things about being at a small college like Holy Cross is that we are able to have things like this in place, where there's somebody who serves, they're appointed each year to serve as a dedicated study abroad advisor for the department, meaning they know sort of, how many courses that you can take towards the major, like what the maximum number of courses, the types of courses that will apply, et cetera. And you have those listed for each of the departments here. So that's definitely a really useful thing to have. So
also, I would say it's nice to be able to go and talk to them in person, because sometimes, like, I know with me, in order to be able to like get through one of my minors, I needed to have there's like, I know someone said they were environmental studies. So like, for me, it's usually they count 3, but because I'm a major and 2 minors and I was there for the year, they'd be willing to count 4. And they also count a different number of courses towards your major or minor or concentration, depending on how long you're going to be there. So that's also really important. So it's not going to be just like 3 and then you're done. If you're staying there for a year, they'll bump it up a couple.
That's awesome. So yeah, communication, and when in doubt, in general, for all things study abroad related, just ask. It never hurts to ask. The more that that you do that, again, the more sort of options you'll be able to avail yourselves of. So thank you, I appreciate that. Finances. So we try to set things up to be as cost neutral as possible, and what we mean by that is that the sort of the major sort of expenses. So tuition and housing, and if you're staying at a residential college where you get all your food provided, much like you do at Holy Cross, each of those things, so housing, tuition, and food, you pay exactly the same as you would at Holy Cross. And so if you are on at the student apartments, basically the way that it works is Holy Cross will bill you for whatever you're using in the way of food, right? So if the program were to offer you, again, full board, they charge you full board. If the program were to offer you, say, half of your meals, they'll charge you half board. If you're at the student villages where none of your meals are provided, then for that term that you're studying abroad, they will simply not charge you for that semester. And the idea is that you use that savings to then pay for groceries. So what we advise students to do is make sure that if you do plan to stay with at a student village, is that you make sure that, in consultation with financial aid, you make sure that you receive the same sort of financial, aid that you would under normal circumstances. If you are, requesting loans that ordinarily would be directed to the board charges, continue to request those loans, because then that'll be what you use to purchase groceries to cook for yourself. As far as how much that costs roughly, it varies really by, based on what the students are doing, right? So like the example I always give is that, like, if you are, cooking, big, like, one pot meals and, like, having lentils most of the time, like, you'll probably, relative to the like $3,500 that full board is at Holy Cross, you'll probably do pretty well over the course of the semester. But if you're like eating out every night, and again, staying at the student villages, you're eating out every night, it'll add up for sure. So if that's a concern of yours, definitely reach out to me. We can talk more details. So other things to note as well, at the student villages, in terms of like things that you can anticipate in terms of fees. So students are responsible for, as I said, visa fees, but they're also responsible for refundable housing deposits. And all of the all of the housing options at Melbourne have some sort of housing deposit. And it's, again, much like a security deposit when you move into an apartment. So you pay a certain amount up front. That can range anywhere from, it's not a trivial amount of money. So it's anywhere from like $300 to like $1,000 on the most expensive option. But the idea is that as long as you don't, destroy your apartment, put, giant holes in the wall, et cetera, you'll get that back in full at the end of the semester or the end of the academic year. So it's not a completely out-of-pocket expense. Let's see, obviously, much like at Holy Cross, if personal expenses, so things like going out and, doing independent travel, shopping, et cetera, those things, are going to be out of pocket, much like at Holy Cross. And the thing that I like to emphasize too is that every program is different. They all have a different infrastructure. They developed again with the different histories and so forth. So the amenities that you may encounter across programs vary, and they vary both across programs and also in relation to Holy Cross. So things that you're used to having free, like printing is a good example. You may not get in Melbourne, and laundry is one that often is frustrating for students to encounter. I like to be upfront about that and disclose. We've asked the executive administration about that, and time and again have been told quite clearly that we cannot reimburse for laundry. So that's just one of the few sort of out of pocket things that you have to make sure to. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll also say one thing is also the gym. So Melbourne has a great sports center. It's really nice. It's got a lifting floor on the bottom, cardio and machines up top. It's got a massive track, lots of fields and stuff like that. But you do have to pay for it unless you go to St. Mary's, in which case it's free. So again, just saying, you get a free gym membership. And it's super nice because it's literally not even 500 feet from and you also get free classes, unlimited. So they have a ton of spin classes, bar classes, lifting classes, Zumba, cool stuff like that. They've got a racquet ball court, tennis courts and stuff like that. Basketball, soccer, you name it, they've got it, cricket. So I would definitely say that's also something to consider because you will have to pay for that unless you go to St. Mary's.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. One of the things that I was going to mention too is let's see, do we have that on this particular slide? It's not on this one, but I'm glad that you bring that up because so we have a program in place where you have every student is given a up through $175 for the semester or $200 for the academic year. Where we'll reimburse you up to that amount for activity fee reimbursement, right? So if you find a specific sort of athletic club that you want to join, and there are startup fees for that, or you find a music group or something like that, or a cultural activity, some sort of thing that's giving you an opportunity to engage in a sustained way with members of the local community. Then we'll reimburse you. So you pay the membership fee up front, and then we'll reimburse you those expenses up through $175 for the semester, $200 for the academic year. The one exception to that is a general gym membership. But if there's a specific sporting activity that has startup fees, we don't want those to be a hindrance for you in terms of getting yourself engaged. So please have to take advantage of that. Abby, if you still got any receipts, send them my way.
I honestly wish I did. And I remember being I'm going to do it. They said to do it. And I was at the fair and I was just standing there, Aiden, Grace and I were all walking down, signing up for everything. I think Aiden and I joined the ski team, and then Grace, Audrey and I joined the surf team. And I literally, as soon as I left it, I was oh my God, I didn't get any receipts for any of the money I just spent. And I was so frustrated. I was
listen,
sad.
There may still be a way. If you have a record of the transaction in some way, even if it's credit card statement, do some digging. We can be creative about that. You can even, if you if somebody,
I got emails from them.
Sorry, everybody, this is a total aside, but this is a good demonstration of how flexible we are, right? So if Abby, you have as somebody you can email that would be able to confirm that you did, so just in an email say, yeah, you paid this money on such and such date, that would line up with a credit card statement or something like that, and that would totally work too.
Interesting. I'll have to see.
So think about that. Yeah. But bottom line is we want to be able to support students in terms of getting themselves involved. In terms of other sort of upfront expenses, again, you book your own flight, you're responsible for paying for it upfront. But what we do is we offset that cost by putting a credit on your account the term that you end up going abroad in the amount of an average round trip ticket to to wherever your program happens to be. And we, so the idea is that, again, you pay for a flight, but then you pay basically that much less for your tuition that particular semester. So again, it balances out that way. Already talked about that. And let's see. Oh, another important note too, just to if you, because of the way that the terms line up in terms of the academic calendar, like where you go in the fall you are arriving early, right? So in, the middle of July, whereas in the spring you are arriving, middle to end of February, right? And so for folks that rely on financial aid to cover things like, let's say, expenses for books, or potentially the groceries in terms of like folks that aren't going to be on a meal plan in Melbourne at the apartments. If you rely on those, just know that there's going to be a gap for those who go in the fall between their arrival, and like middle of July to when those funds actually end up being dispersed, which is on the normal Holy Cross, timeline, which means like August, September, right? So there may be like a gap of like, 4 to 6 weeks between the time of your arrival to when those funds actually disperse. So that's just an important thing to note. Whereas in the spring, you won't encounter that situation because your funds typically will disperse in January, and then, you'll be in Melbourne, not until like the middle to end of February. So just an important distinction there. Already mentioned that you can work. We recommend that during, the limit is 20 hours per week essentially, but our office really recommends that you try to only like work during the school year, 10 hours per week, to not sort of distract, but it's a really great thing to do to kind of get yourself involved and make a little extra money. But again, when the courses are not in session, you can work as much as you want. Eligibility. So Melbourne is one of our programs that has a strict GPA cutoff of 3.0. So that having been said, for those who are listening in, and like, let's say that like you are, currently at like in like a 2.9, between 2.9 and a 3.0, right? And let's say like whether you're there now or whether like at the time that you finish this current semester, you end up being in that 2.9 range. For folks who we as an office feel like really would be a good fit for this, and we feel confident that they'll be able to, within just another semester, or potentially 2 if you're going in the spring, be able to bring the GPA up into that target 3.0 area. We have the ability potentially to offer conditional admission in consultation with the University of Melbourne, to where it's like, all right, we say, we vouch for you, say, look, this person is great, awesome student. They're just shy of the mark, and we feel confident that they'll be able to get there. Often we're able to offer, conditional admission to those students. So my advice to you is that if Melbourne, is your number one choice, don't avoid submitting an application because you think that you are not going to be eligible because of your GPA. There may be alternative ways of making it work, and conditional admission is the main way that works. You can't have any deficiencies on your transcript at the time that you end up going abroad. So if you have like a withdrawal on your transcript, the idea is that you need to address that, fulfill that deficiency, either through, let's say, a summer class or a 5th course during the semester prior to studying abroad. You don't have to have that taken care of prior to applying, but prior to going abroad. And the same is true of declaring a major. So we completely understand a lot of folks are still actively in that process right now of figuring it out. You don't need to have declared prior to submitting your study abroad application, but you will have to have declared a major prior to actually going abroad. In terms of the application process itself, it's really straightforward. It's an online application that's at sa.holycross.edu. There is one letter of recommendation that you'll submit, or rather that you'll request from a faculty member. We, obviously our guidance is that you reach out to the faculty member via email or, have a Zoom conversation, request that letter from them personally, prior to entering their information into our system, because the second that you enter their email, their names into the recommendation portal on the website, it generates an auto email requesting the invitation or requesting the letter. So, to avoid, embarrassment and making sure that, we're respecting our faculty's time, do the right thing and reach out to them in advance of entering their names into the system. The system, we've recently gotten access to transcripts, so the system may or may not ask for an unofficial transcript. If it does, simply download a copy of your unofficial transcript from STAR and upload it to our system. And the main substance of the application is a personal statement. It's a 2 to 3 page statement where you basically you're talking, and to be clear too, you're going to be submitting the statement to me. I'm going to be the one that's reading this. If it's not already abundantly clear, I want every student who's eligible to be able to go on this program. So it's less a question of like jumping through like these, unreasonable hoops to be able to like, prove to me that you can do it. It's more a question of convincing me that the program is indeed a good fit for you, right? In terms of like, why Melbourne? Like what is it about it that appeals to you, like personally, professionally, academically? How do you see it contributing to, your development, et cetera? So as specific as you can be about why Melbourne is the right program for you, the better. I'm less interested in like, sort of a laundry list of like your accomplishments, or especially like the list, like a lot of times folks will just like, list the courses that they took and so forth. I'm less interested in that. I have access to transcripts, so I'll know what courses you took. I just want to know, what is it about Melbourne that you feel will be a good fit for you? And just to know that, again, you're not applying to college again. So there's no need to treat it with that level of sort of anxiety. It's again, we're on the same team as far as that's concerned. So be thoughtful, but don't spend tons and tons and tons of time on that. And again, just a reminder to renew your passport. You should check that today if you haven't already. Make sure that it does not expire before January 2023. And with that, I'm going to offer Grace a chance to offer her sort of like last thoughts on like, why this is a program that you should strongly consider, and then we'll open things up generally to questions for both of us. Yeah.
Me?
So Abby.
Okay. Sorry. So sorry.
Yeah. No. Sure.
No, it's fine. Yeah. I mean, I obviously I absolutely fell in love with Australia, so I would 100% recommend. Like, I'm thinking about going back for law school. So I really think that you will have like such a great experience while you're there. Everyone is so welcoming. Traveling around Australia is absolutely incredible. You have, you get to go see the Barrier Reef potentially if you choose to do so. So that's really great. And the integration, it's such a unique culture. And Victoria's got so much to offer. So I would just really recommend. And the University of Melbourne is great. So 100%. I think you guys should do it. Plus, like, when's the next time you're going to be able to go to Australia as if you were going to school at Holy Cross, is the way that I put it. Like, when's the next time you're just going to be casually on the other side of the world in a different hemisphere? So I really recommend grabbing this opportunity as best you can. So yeah.